The year is 2025 and MotoGP isn't racing anymore. It's hostage to one man. The track isn't asphalt anymore. It's warped space, bent and reshaped by the gravity of Marc Márquez. The air in the paddock is suffocating, thick with resignation, because everyone already knows the ending before the lights go out. They're not racing for victory. They're racing to survive. They're racing to keep themselves from drowning in the wake of a storm that no longer behaves like a human being, but like a singularity, pulling everything into its orbit. Marquez doesn't chase records anymore. He erases them, burns them, reduces them to dust under his wheels. The grid isn't fighting for championships. They're clinging to scraps in a season already swallowed whole. Silverstone was the point of ignition. Everyone thought it was another race weekend, another chapter in a sport that has seen generations of giants. But Silverstone was the event horizon. Marquez walked into that paddock with the same crooked smile, the same scarred body, but something behind the eyes had shifted. The injuries, the lost years, the doubts, gone. What returned was a predator in final form, a version of him people whispered about, but never believed would exist again. That weekend became the start of the most frightening streak in the sport's modern history. 7 sprints, 7 main races, a perfect sweep of reality. 24 hours after Silverstone ended, every man on the grid already knew. 2025 no longer belonged to MotoGP. It belonged to Marquez. 259 points in 7 rounds, a number so grotesque it looks wrong when written down. The math of a tyrant. It's not domination. It's annexation. Marquez didn't just take wins, he took hope. He left the sport gasping, calculating what it meant to exist under a rule so complete, so merciless, that it resembled slavery more than competition. From 17th place to the backmarker of the championship, the combined total didn't even reach his tally. Imagine that. Dozens of riders, mechanics, engineers, all their sweat and effort stacked together, still failing to equal the weight of one man. That isn't a gap. That's annihilation. That's the cold silence of space swallowing sound. And here's the thing. This isn't the Marquez of 2019, the one who danced with fire and carried wounds like trophies. This is something unrecognizable, a perfected monster. He doesn't waste energy, doesn't bleed arrogance, doesn't even gloat. He simply destroys with clinical efficiency. He is a surgeon operating on the limits of physics, cutting open corners, carving trajectories that shouldn't exist. Riders used to fear his aggression. Now they fear his calm. That's worse, because calm means inevitability. Calm means inevitability. Calm means God has already decided the outcome. In Hungary, he won by 4.3 seconds. But that number doesn't tell the story. On the final lap, with victory already secured, he went a full second faster than the rider behind him. A second on the last lap, in a sport where a tenth is a gulf. Why? Because he wanted to know where the edge was. He wasn't racing his rivals, he was racing physics. He was testing whether gravity itself could keep him honest. His rivals crossed the line knowing they had given everything, and Marquez crossed the line knowing he hadn't even gone close to the red line. That's the nightmare. He's not at his limit. The limit doesn't exist for him anymore. You want cinematic? Picture Interstellar. Cooper floating through a black hole, existing outside of time, playing with years like toys while the rest of humanity ages and collapses. That's Marquez now. While the rest of the grid is sweating tenths, praying for tire grip, calculating fuel, Marquez is already a lap ahead in his mind. He isn't just reacting. He's dictating a reality no one else can even perceive. Rivals are stuck in present tense. Marquez is writing the future in real time. When you watch him ride, it feels slowed down, like he's manipulating the film reel itself, stretching seconds into eternity, then snapping them shut whenever he pleases. Look at the sprint era. It was designed for chaos, for variety, for unpredictability. The idea was to break dynasties, to keep riders from running away with the crown. And yet here we are, Marquez with 13 sprint wins in one season. 13, more than some riders manage in their careers. The sprint era was supposed to democratize MotoGP. Instead, Marquez crowned himself emperor. He mastered the short war and the long one, the quick knife fight and the drawn-out campaign. there's nothing left. No weakness, no crack, no Achilles heel. The rivals know it. You can see it in their eyes when the camera pans across the grid. Jorge Martin, once hailed as the machine of qualifying pace, now reduced to chasing shadows. Pecco Bagnaia, the golden boy of Ducati, suffocating under the weight of his own fading aura. Pedro Acosta, the child prodigy turned lion, humbled and forced to learn what real fear feels like when Marquez decides to toy with him in qualifying. These men aren't beaten on track. They're beaten before the visor drops. They've inhaled the poison of inevitability, and inevitability is fatal. The Spanish Empire in MotoGP should, on paper, be unstoppable. Riders like Martin, Acosta, Alex Marquez, all feeding off the same ecosystem that produced greatness. But when they stand next to Marc, they look small. The same blood, the same heritage, yet separated by a canyon that will never be bridged. It's not just talent, it's willpower carved from stone. It's madness disciplined into genius. It's superhuman instinct fused with human scars. That combination doesn't replicate. It doesn't repeat. It doesn't get passed down. It's once in history. And that's why this run feels less like sport and more like myth. Records don't matter anymore. Numbers don't matter anymore. Because when you watch this version of Marquez, you realize something terrifying. This is the peak, the unreachable summit. No rider alive or unborn may ever touch it. If you're chasing MotoGP titles, this is the benchmark. And the benchmark is impossible. He's playing chess on a galactic board while the rest still figure out checkers. The thought alone should make every young rider in Moto2 and Moto3 question why they bother. Because what does it mean to live in the Marquez era? It means you'll never know freedom. You'll never taste glory untouched. You'll live as a supporting character in the saga of a man who turned pain into prophecy, crashes into coronations. The paddock used to be filled with noise. Now it's silent. Because silence is the sound of submission. Silence is what happens when one man bends an entire generation into background noise. And yet, here's the cruelest part. This is still only the middle of the storm. Barcelona awaits, his so-called weakest track. But even there, the whispers say he's going to podium, maybe win, because his worst is still untouchable. That's the abyss rivals stare into. They know his ceiling is infinite, but they can't even reach his floor. His weakness is still better than their strength. That's despair dressed as mathematics. That's mortality kneeling to divinity. So what happens next? The sport will cling to false hope. They'll talk about young lions rising, about Ducati strategies, about Aprilia's resurgence, about KTM building weapons for Acosta. They'll whisper of resistance, of cracks, of a possible mistake. But deep down they know, this isn't a streak. This isn't a hot run. This is the new law of nature. This is MotoGP under alien occupation. Marquez has rewritten the code, corrupted the file, and locked everyone else out. And when he lifts that 9th title, it won't feel like a victory. It'll feel like a requiem. The funeral of competition, the burial of dreams, and the beginning of a mythology no one will ever erase. Because this isn't dominance. This isn't sport. This is Marc Márquez in God mode, and God mode doesn't end.